Hello Greenstylers, Cynthia here with your sewing tutorial for Greenstyle's Discovery Jacket. This pattern is a unique collaboration with Discovery Fabrics, who've been making and selling this style for years. They received so many requests for a pattern that they finally decided to turn to a trusted designer, enter Greenstyle and Angie, to create a pattern in a full and inclusive range of sizes. You'll find this pattern not only available in our curvy line, but also straight and youth. And speaking of size ranges, you'll find our new size charts featured for the first time. We're really excited about how much easier it will be to find and create your perfect fit. We suggest outerwear jacket fabric such as hard shell Polartec or fleece. But our pattern testers had great success with a wide range from lightweight fabrics to heavy. And here are the pieces that you'll need to cut. Cut one back main labeled B1 on the fold. Be sure to transfer notches from the pattern onto your fabric. We have notches at the top, at the arm side, and at the sides. Cut two of piece B2, the front main. Cut them as mirrored images and make sure to transfer the notches from the pattern onto your fabric. Be sure to mark the pocket stitch lines as well. Cut two of piece B3, the side panel, as mirror images, again marking all notches. Cut four of piece B4, the inner pocket. You'll have two sets of mirrored images. Be sure to transfer the notch, trace the pocket stitch line onto the wrong side of the fabric. If your fabric's very thick, like mine, you can cut two from a lighter weight lining fabric. Now cut two of piece S1, the sleeve. Mark the notches onto your fabric. If making the optional zipper guard, cut one on the fold, and if making the optional zipper garages, cut either 2 or 4 depending on how many garages you'd like on your jacket. I'll be making the optional collar today, and if you're making the collar as well, you'll cut 2 of the A4 piece, the collar. Cut 2 of main fabric, but if your fabric is very thick, you can opt to make one out of a lining fabric. You'll need a little bit of interfacing for this project. I find Pellin Shapeflex 101 works great. If you're making the collar, you'll need a piece for the collar and some long 1/2-inch strips. We'll get started with the pockets by laying piece B2, the main front, on your table face up. Find the notch and align it with the pocket lining piece. Lay the pocket lining piece with right sides together onto your main front. Pin in place along the pocket stitch line. Stitch with a straight stitch on your sewing machine right along that pocket stitch line. Carefully cut to the corners at a 45-degree angle. Make sure you don't clip through the threads. If your fabric is thick like mine, you can cut the vertical excess out. Now fold the lining toward the back and smooth out those corners. Iron the seam flat if your fabric can be ironed. Always test if you're unsure. Now open the pocket lining back out again and push that seam allowance toward the pocket lining. We're going to understitch that seam allowance onto the pocket lining just next to the seam. Again, as you can see here, I'm stitching the seam allowance to the pocket lining, so I'm stitching just to the right of that seam line. This will help keep that pocket lining inside of the pocket so it doesn't peek out as it's worn. And there you can see the stitch line on the lining, nothing on the outside. If your zipper is too long for the pocket, you'll want to adjust it before attaching. You'll need to leave approximately a 1/2 inch below and above the pocket opening. If you're using the zipper garages, you can use them at the top or the bottom or both ends of the zipper. Fold the zipper garage piece in half with wrong sides together. Then place the folded edge toward the zipper teeth, just covering the zipper stop. You'll probably have some excess hanging off the sides and also the end of the zipper tape. Play around with it to decide how far toward the center you'd like the zipper garage to sit. Once satisfied, baste the side edges to keep the zipper garages in place. Trim off any excess on the sides and top and bottom, and then treat the zipper with the garages as one piece. Now place the zipper into the rectangle opening and pin it into place with the outer edge of the zipper tape even with the edge of the main front. I'll be using some wash away adhesive, also called pressure tape, to hold the zipper in place. I made one pocket with 2 zipper garages and one with a single zipper garage. Here's a quick look at both of them side by side. We will now stitch the zipper in place using a straight stitch. If you haven't already, repeat all of these zipper steps for the other side. Now lay the main front piece with wrong sides facing up on your table and place the other piece before the inner pocket onto the pocket lining with right side facing down, just like the main front piece. Pin along the outer edges. Now fold the top half of the front main piece down so that it's out of the way. We want to pin the 2 pocket pieces together along that top edge, but avoid pinning the front main piece with them. We're going to stitch across the top edge of these 2 pocket pieces, again making sure that you're only stitching the 2 layers. Now you have a few options. Neaten this top edge using a serger or binding, or you can do as I'm about to show you, finish it off with some Foldover Elastic. FOE will be helpful in stabilizing the inner pocket, especially if you're using a lightweight fabric. Simply fold the elastic over the edge of the fabric, just as the name suggests, so that you have the fabric sandwiched in between 2 layers of elastic, and begin using a zigzag stitch on your sewing machine to attach it. Pull the elastic a little bit to give it a slight stretch and stitch all the way down to the end. Now unfold the front main back up, and we're going to baste the remaining edges of the pocket to the front main. Repeat all of these pocket steps with the other side. Place the side panel and the main front with right sides facing up on your table. Verify that they both have the single notch next to each other, and then flip the side panel onto the front main, pinning or clipping in place. Stitch using a straight stitch and a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Move the zipper out of the way and then continue stitching to the bottom. Neaten the seam using a serger or binding. Top stitch if desired by pushing the seam toward the side panel and stitching over the side panel next to the seam. Repeat for the other side. Now we'll attach both side panels to the back main piece. Lay everything with right sides up on the table, aligning the sides and double notches, and then flip the front and side panel pieces onto the back main, aligning raw edges and matching double notches. Pin or clip in place. Now let's repeat for the other side. Stitch using a straight stitch and a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Neaten the seams using a serger or binding. Again, top stitch if desired by pushing the seam toward the back and top stitching over the back main piece next to the seam. Lay everything on your table with right sides facing up, then flip the front and side panel pieces onto the back main, aligning at the shoulder seam. Pin or clip in place. Stitch using a straight stitch and a 3/8 inch seam allowance. And you guessed it, neaten the seam using a serger or binding, and top stitch if desired by pushing the seam allowance toward the back. If making the hood, head on over to the PDF tutorial for the hood steps, and then come back and join us for the hem. Now's the time to apply the interfacing. You'll apply 1/2 inch strips to the full length of the front center edges. You can either just cut long 1/2 inch strips and attach them and cut off the excess, or check the chart in the tutorial for exact lengths. If doing the collar, you'll need to attach interfacing to the main collar piece, but not the inner collar piece. I will say that with my very thick fabric, I actually pulled off the interfacing. It was thick enough and sturdy enough without it. With right sides together, place the main or outer collar onto the bodice. This is the one with the interfacing. Line up the center back and notch and the front edges. Pin or clip in place. Stitch using a straight stitch and a 3/8 inch seam allowance. We'll be adding some more Foldover Elastic to bind the bottom edge, but before doing so, you'll want to neaten that bottom edge. A rotary cutter is actually a really great tool here. I'll be attaching the FOE in 2 passes. The first will be more of a basting stitch with a 4.5 length and width. The elastic and jacket are wrong sides touching at this point, so the elastic is wrong side up, the jacket is wrong side down. Begin stitching and making sure there's a little bit of overhang on that elastic. You don't want the edge of the fabric touching all the way to the fold of the elastic. Stretch the elastic as you attach it. The thicker the fabric of the jacket, the more you'll want to stretch the elastic as you attach it. We suggest practicing with some scraps to see how the elastic and fabric interact. Fold the elastic over to the front of the jacket and stitch in place with a final stitch. Shorten the length anywhere between 3.0 and 4.0. Stitch as close to the edge of the elastic as possible. Give the front edge of the jacket a little extra stability and prevent stretching by applying a basting stitch all the way along the front edge. Fold the seam allowance to the collar up toward the collar as you stitch. If you need to shorten the zipper, fold the top edge 90 degrees and clip off the extra. You can leave a little overhang. You don't need to clip it off quite as flush as I did. If you can, remove the teeth that you don't need. I'm using some old scissors that I really don't care about to break each tooth, which knocks off the front half, and then I can pull the back half off using my fingers. Now once again, fold that top edge 90 degrees and stitch along the fold. For the optional zipper guard, apply interfacing to the wrong side of half of the zipper guard. I of course have skipped this step because my fabric is so thick and sturdy. Then fold the zipper guard in half with right sides together. You'll stitch the curved edge with a 1/4 inch seam allowance tapering off as you approach the fold. Now, I forgot to do this and had to go back later to fix my mistake, so you can do better than I did. Now, while the zipper guard is still folded with right sides touching, also stitch the bottom edge of the zipper guard using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. With the top and bottom of the zipper guard stitched, we'll turn it right sides out. Align the two long raw edges and neaten using a zigzag stitch or your serger. Note that your bottom edge will look differently from mine because it will be finished. If your fabric is thick or fluffy, sew channels along the length of the zipper guard. Start at 1/4 inch from the folded edge and sew 2 more, so a total of 3, 1/4 inch from each other. Fold the top edge of the zipper guard down at the mark, or fold it so that the zipper guard is 3/8 of an inch shorter than the length of the center front edge, including the collar. Lay the edge of the zipper tape onto the stitched edge of the zipper guard. The zipper will be right side facing up, and it may be the pull side or it may be the insert side of the zipper, depending on which zipper you've purchased. We saw both during testing. Use pins or clips or double-sided pressure tape to secure the zipper in place. Fold down the top edge of the zipper guard and baste the zipper to the zipper guard. Place the zipper and zipper guard onto the center front edge of the jacket with right sides together. The stitched edge of the zipper guard will align with the raw edge of the jacket. The finished bottom edge of the zipper guard will align with the bottom edge of the fold-over elastic at the bottom of your jacket. The top edge of the zipper guard will end 3/8 of an inch from the upper edge of the collar or hood. Stitch this one side first using a straight stitch and a zipper foot on your sewing machine. If you have very thick fabric, a zipper foot may not be helpful. If you are going to use your regular foot, just make sure to be very aware of where those zipper teeth are and make sure that you stitch accordingly. Before sewing the other side, connect and close the zipper. Mark the seam of the collar and bodice on the remaining side of the zipper. That way you know exactly where to place that zipper on the other side so that the two seams line up perfectly on your jacket. Now place the remaining zipper side onto the other side of the jacket. Make sure you line up the mark that you just made with that seam at the collar and jacket. Align the edge of the zipper tape with the raw edge of the jacket. You should end up with about 3/8 of an inch space at the top of the collar or hood, and the bottom of the zipper will align with the bottom of the fold-over elastic. Stitch using a straight stitch and a zipper foot on your sewing machine. Press the neckline seam allowance of the inner collar up. That's 3/8 of an inch toward the wrong side, and it will look like this. With right sides together, pin or clip the inner collar to the main collar. You'll be pinning or clipping all along the front center edges and top edge. Stitch using a straight stitch and a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Before you begin stitching, verify that the seam allowance of both inner and outer collars are pointed upward. If they are not, make adjustments as necessary before you begin stitching. Clip the corners at a 45-degree angle and then turn the collar right side out. Carefully pin or baste the inner collar to cover the seam allowance. I'll be using some wash-away adhesive, also known as pressure tape. A quick tip regarding your pressure tape: if it loses its stick, just add a little bit of water. I like to remove the first side of the tape and then run it through water that I've spritzed onto my table. That'll rejuvenate it right up and have it nice and sticky. Now let's do a bit of top stitching. Begin at the very bottom edge of the jacket just outside of the zipper and top stitch the zipper all the way up to the very top corner of the collar. Go all the way around the top of the collar to the corner and then back the other side of the zipper. Make sure that the seam and the zipper tape are pointed away from the zipper teeth and in towards the jacket. You're going to top stitch all the way down to the very bottom edge of the jacket. Come back over to the collar and we'll top stitch so that we catch that inner collar with the bobbin thread all the way across the bottom edge of the collar from one zipper to the other. Set your sewing machine to a top stitch length of 3, 3.5, maybe even 4, depending on what you prefer. We'll now apply Foldover Elastic to the lower edge of the sleeve. The easiest method would be to sandwich the edge of the sleeve in between the Foldover Elastic and stitch it from end to end. Make sure to stretch the elastic as you apply. Another option that some of our testers preferred would be to stitch the short ends of the FOE together with right sides together and then press open the seam allowance. Then it would be attached to the end of the sleeve after the underarm seam is stitched. The method I'll use is a little bit more work, but will reduce bulk in those seams at the end of the sleeve. And with a very heavy fabric like this, a bulky seam would be quite bulky. Begin in the same manner that we stitched the hem. The elastic and fabric will be wrong sides together, and we'll use a lengthened zigzag stitch to attach them. Be sure to leave at least ½ inch unstitched at the beginning and end, and stretch the elastic as you attach it. And here's what I mean when I say leave ½ inch unstitched at the beginning and end. For very thick fabric, I recommend finishing the long edges of the sleeve before stitching them together. That way you can iron the sleeve seam open. Fold the sleeve in half with right sides together and pin or clip the long underarm seam. Stitch with a straight stitch and a 3/8 inch seam allowance. If you haven't already, you can now neaten the seam using a serger or binding. Then you can tack the seam allowance to one side along the FOE if you did not sew in the round. If you're with me though, iron this seam open. Then mark both ends of the elastic where it crosses over the seam. Twist the two ends of the elastic so that they are right sides together and aligned at your markings. Stitch the two ends together at your marking. Clip off the excess, leaving 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch. Now rearrange the elastic so that the seam allowance of the elastic and the seam allowance of the sleeve are touching each other. Arrange them so that they're both open and flat. Now use a zigzag stitch to finish attaching the elastic to the sleeve so that you have a complete loop. Now we can begin folding our elastic over to cover the right side, and we'll stitch it in place using a zigzag stitch. Stitch as closely to the edge of the elastic as possible. I know it was a lot of steps, but now we have a really nice finished sleeve edge, and it's not too bulky with this thick fabric all folded over. With the jacket wrong side out on your table, take your sleeve and turn it right side out. To make sure you're placing the correct sleeve on the correct side of the jacket, lay your sleeve next to the armhole that you plan to insert it, and you should have the single notch up top. The other sleeve notches we'll be utilizing are the T-notches up top and also the double notch on the back. Now slip the sleeve into the jacket while holding it in the same position, and we'll begin matching notches. The single notch with the single notch. The T-notch is the shoulder seam mark, so find that shoulder seam and match it up. Clip in place. The double notch with the double notch. And finally, the notch on the side insert matches with the underarm seam of the sleeve. Use additional pins or clips as needed. Stitch using a straight stitch and a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Neaten with a serger or zigzag stitch. And with that, you are done. Congratulations on creating your very own Greenstyle Discovery jacket. Please share your makes across social media using hashtag GSDiscoveryJacket. We'll be on the lookout and can't wait to see what you've created. I hope you'll sew with me again. Be sure to check out our catalog of sewing tutorial videos. You can sew along with us for almost all of our patterns. And make sure to subscribe to our channel to be the first notified for all of our new releases. Until next time, happy sewing from me and all of us at Greenstyle.